Hello friends. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I still recall the clammy feel of that November morning as I eased my cruiser onto the gravel drive of the old Langston property. The fog lay thick over the pasture, drifting in ghostly tendrils between the gnarled fence posts, and the low sun, barely risen, struggled to burn through the haze. My breath made little clouds inside the cab as I lifted the brim of my hat and gripped the steering wheel. Behind me, in the passenger seat, sat the yellowed file on Ella Whitaker's disappearance. 3 years cold, no leads, and a mother's hope fading under courthouse fluorescence. I stepped out, the sole crunch of my boots on frost-hardened dirt the only sound. The farmhouse loomed ahead, windows boarded, paint peeling like dead skin, and I could almost hear Ella's laughter echoing through the halls before it died. I pressed my fingers to the window slat, wood warped by years of neglect, and traced the outline of a faded drawing. A childlike sun and stick figure family, scrawled in bright crayons before weathered into something pale and indistinct. The memory of Ella's last call came to me, her voice crackling, frantic, over a busted cell phone line. "Deputy Reed, please, there's something here with me." Then static. I crouched by the back door, where Ella's muddy boot prints had ended on the threshold. There was no broken glass, no sign of forced entry. Just those prints, then nothing. The case file hypothesized she'd slipped away into the woods behind the barn, pursued by someone silent as a shadow. I opened my kit and extracted a single vial of luminol. The chemical seeped into the cracks of aged wood, and almost immediately, faint blue luminescence pulsed under the door frame. Blood, old, but unmistakably human. My heart thudded as I photographed the glow. Evidence, at last. I parked my cruiser beside the barn and unsheathed my flashlight, its beam slicing through the gloom. Inside, the rafters overhead creaked like an old man's spine, and the smell of hay and diesel hung heavy. I followed an oily streak across the dirt floor, where someone had dragged something. Perhaps her coat, perhaps worse. The beam flicked to a stack of crates in the northwest corner. The largest crate had slight gouges in the wood, as if pried open, then hastily resealed. I eased it aside and found a suitcase, battered and padlocked. My breath caught. I pried the lock with bolt cutters. Inside lay a faded blouse, rumpled and stiff, and a single silver locket engraved with the initials EWI pressed my thumb over the engraving. It was Ella's. I bagged the items carefully, labeling each. As I turned to leave, a soft rustle came from the hayloft above. My pulse spiked. I swept the flashlight upward. In the dim light, I thought I saw a shape. A tattered doll, its porcelain face cracked, perched on a beam. It stared down at me, unblinking. I swallowed hard and called it in. "Base, this is Reed. I have evidence, possible homicide in the Langston barn. Requesting backup and a K-9 unit." The call echoed in the empty space as I climbed the ladder to retrieve the doll. It hadn't been in the file. Not the photo, not the witness statements. It was new. In my glove, the doll's chipped cheek was as cold as Ella's final whisper. I tucked it into an evidence bag, the weight of its missing eye like a promise that someone had been here, someone who knew Ella better than we ever did. Back at the station, I laid out the artifacts under the flickering overhead lights, the blouse, the locket, the doll, My partner, Lieutenant Gomez, hovered with a thermos of coffee. "Where'd you find these?" she asked, voice low. "In the barn, and there was faint blood. Fresh enough we can pull DNA." I paused. "But there's more?" I pulled the evidence bag containing the doll from my coat. "This wasn't listed in the original investigation. No one ever found it." Gomez frowned. "Why surface now?" I shrugged. "Maybe someone wants the case reopened, or someone's trying to cover their tracks by planting it." The doll's head lolled in the bag, one eye socket like an empty warning. That night I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, replaying the static-laced voicemail. "Help me, Mark." It had been cut off abruptly, and I'd never traced its origin. Now, with this doll, I felt the case breathing again. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. "Meet me at the fairgrounds. Under the carousel. Come alone. No number. No signature." By dawn, I was on the county road headed for the abandoned fairgrounds where Ella had worked a summer job before disappearing. The carousel had been rusted and sold for scrap years ago. Only the concrete pad remained, cracks seeping grass. I parked and stepped onto the cracked surface. The world hushed around me. The text instructed me to look for red chalk arrows on the pavement. Half a dozen delicate arrows pointed toward the east end, where the concession stands had stood. The dilapidated snack booths were darkened shells, rust licking at metal frames. Suddenly, as I approached the last, half hidden by ivy, I saw the arrow directing me beneath a loose floorboard. I pried it up and found a small tin box. Inside, a stack of photos. Ella grinning, playing ring toss. Ella talking to someone out of frame. Ella alone at midnight beneath the carousel, her face lit by moonlight. Beneath them lay a folded note. "Only 4 remain unsolved. Solve mine, and you'll find them all." My pulse hammered. 4 more who had vanished, maybe forgotten by everyone except me. I scrubbed the photos with latex-gloved fingertips, trying to imprint every detail. One photo showed a vague shadow behind Ella, tall and broad-shouldered. I looked up, scanning the broken fairgrounds. Shadows stretched in the rising sun, shells of Ferris wheels skeletal against the gray sky. I pocketed the photos and the note, my mind racing. Whoever this tipster was, they knew personal details no stranger could guess. They were hunting me as much as I was hunting them. My cruiser's engine growled in the distance, impatient. I slid behind the wheel, tin box in the passenger seat, and dialed the crime lab. "I have photos and evidence for Hayes' case and one more. Locket, blouse, doll, need testing ASAP." I drove home in silence, fields blurring past. My headlights caught every hollow in the road like tooth cavities, every tree scrawl like warnings etched in bark. By the time I reached my driveway, the sun was high. On my porch lay another envelope. No stamp, no handwriting, just my name. Inside, a single Polaroid. A patch of woods, 2 mile markers from my home. In the center lay a battered suitcase, the padlock cut. And in cursive on the back, 3 to go. You know where. The cold fear I'd traded for determination hardened into something else. Dread. 4 cases, 4 victims, each file gathering dust. 4 messages meant this was no random tip. This was a reckoning, and I was running out of time. I pulled onto the cracked asphalt of Pinecrest Trailer Park just past dusk. The sky bruised purple and gray. The park had once buzzed with families and weekend fishermen, but now the trailers sat silent, their steps collapsing and windows chalked over in dust. My cruiser's headlights cut swaths through the gathering shadows as I followed the directions etched in the last Polaroid. Go to Lot 12, under the rusted stairs. Under my breath, I muttered Ella's name, feeling the weight of that silver locket against my side. 4 victims now, and a tipster who might be watching my every move. I clicked off the engine, the sudden quiet hammering at my ears. The lot numbers were faded, half obscured by peeling stickers, but I found 12 still visible on a dented mailbox. I stepped out, boots crunching on broken glass and fallen leaves. Rusted metal stairs led to the trailer's back door, which wobbled on its hinges, almost inviting me inside. The temperature had dropped sharply. My breath fogged as I knelt under the lowest stair. Years of wind and rain had burrowed into the concrete, and beneath a loose slab I found a small, battered journal wrapped in oilcloth. My gloves snapped as I eased it into an evidence bag. Inside the station, I flipped through the journal under harsh fluorescence. The pages were yellowed, the handwriting cramped and urgent. It belonged to Marisol Mari Alvarez, age 24, last seen in May of 2011 when she stopped working the midnight shift at the local diner. Witnesses had said she left carrying a to-go cup, then vanished. The journal chronicled late-night phone calls from an unknown man requesting personal details, escalating into threats when she ignored him. The last entry read, "He knows where I live." I'm so scared, I can't tell anyone. A chill crept down my spine. The Alvarez case had been dismissed as a runaway, part of the transient problem, the file note read. No one in my department ever followed up. I traced my finger along a coffee-stained margin note. Check Route 47, mile marker 102. I recognized it from a separate folder. That folder belonged to Luther "Loot" Jensen, a drifter who disappeared without a trace in 2007. His bicycle found crushed beside his battered RV on the shoulder. No witnesses, no clues. I drove straight through the night, headlights blazing down the deserted highway. Mile marker 102 lay just beyond a curve flanked by dense pines that arched overhead, knotting their branches into a tunnel. I parked and walked the shoulder until I found the twisted spokes of Jensen's bicycle half buried in leaves. Kneeling, I brushed dirt from the frame, finding a small engraving on the handlebars. M.A. My pulse raced. Mari Alvarez's initials on Luther Jensen's bike. 2 unrelated cases, now intertwined by a single hand. I scanned the tree line, no footprints, just the distant buzz of cicadas and the whisper of wind through needles. In the glow of my flashlight, I spotted a flick of color at the base of a tree, a scrap of blue fabric. I tugged it free, a torn scrap of Mari's waitress uniform, the diner logo still stitched in red. Back at the lab, I watched as Tex processed the journal, the fabric, and a single delicate fingerprint lifted from the journal's cover. The print matched a suspect in another cold file, David Greer, a former state trooper dismissed in 2009 for misconduct. He'd been stationed on Route 47 and had keys to multiple crime scenes. Greer's file noted a penchant for keeping souvenirs, pocketed watches, photographs, even personal letters. I drove to Greer's last known address, an abandoned maintenance yard a mile off the highway where old trooper cars rusted like forgotten warnings. Through broken gates I crept, the moonlight casting every broken windshield like a watchful eye. In the guard shack, I pried open a desk drawer and found a rat's nest of mementos. A perfume-stained handkerchief from M.A., a ticket stub from the Prescott Fair dated May 2011, and a dispatch badge bearing no number. My radio crackled. Lieutenant Gomez. "Reed, you find anything?" My voice caught. "We've got Alvarez and Jensen linked. His bike, her uniform. Greer's stash is full of them, proof of his obsession. I'm calling this in." Gomez arrived with backup as I bagged the trove. Outside, sirens cut through the night. I watched the empty yard as they led Greer away in handcuffs, his stoic face barely visible under the neon glow. He refused to speak, but as I drove home, I realized 4 victims laid bare, and still 2 to go. The tipster's promise, "You know where," loomed in my mind. Unsolved cases scattered through county archives like bones waiting to be found. Sunrise found me at the old logging camp off Highway 6, mile marker 14, a site tied to a disappearance from 2005. A young driller named Anna Chen, whose toolkit was found neatly stacked beneath a fallen pine. No body ever surfaced. I parked beneath the charred skeleton of trees, their blackened trunks looming like sentinels. The earth here smelled of resin and rot. I followed the map from Greer's stash, hand-drawn lines leading to a shallow pit hidden behind a berm. My shovel bit into the soft earth. Fingers of dirt flew. Hours passed before my blade hit something hard, a metal toolbox. It clanged as I turned it over. Inside lay Anna's toolkit, her name stamped into the leather handle, and a battered notebook. "Find me," scratched on the cover. My phone vibrated. Another text from the same unknown number. "Final one, Water's Edge, County Park." She held the badge in her hand. I stood at the edge of the pit, chest tight as a drum. The past and present twisted together. 4 names named, 2 still ghosts in the files. The final message would lead me straight to the Water's Edge at DeWitt County Park, where a young deputy named Lauren Briggs had vanished in 2010 after reporting a disturbance near the lake. Her body was never recovered. As I stared down at Anna's toolbox, the woods around me silent but for the wind, I realized how alone I truly was. The tipster had guided me through every dark secret, and I had no idea who to trust. Every clue I unearthed tightened the noose, leading me closer to the final victim, and perhaps my own reckoning with what it means to carry a badge stained with forgotten sins. My reflection trembled in the dark waters of the pit, the distant chirp of crickets like questions I couldn't answer. I slid the tools back into the toolbox and stood, shoulders aching. 2 to go, the note said. But in my gut I knew only one remained undiscovered. And when I found her, I would have to face the question that had been echoing in every abandoned barn and overgrown trail. Who had been guiding me? And why had they chosen me to finish what was started so many years ago? The dawn chill clung to my jacket as I descended the steep bank toward DeWitt County Park's secluded shoreline. The final clue burning in my pocket like a live coal. Final one, Water's Edge, County Park. She held the badge in her hand. My boots sank into sodden grass, each step accompanied by the soft susurrus of reeds brushing against each other. Mist hovered just above the glassy surface of the lake, paling the world to monochrome. Deputy Lauren Briggs had vanished almost 15 years ago. She'd been on solo patrol, investigating reports of a late-night disturbance. Something about strange lights flickering across the water and muffled voices echoing off the trees. The official report said she radioed in that she was heading to the dock to check the boathouse. Then nothing. No echo of her voice, no half-finished investigation, not even her flashlight, which she was known to keep strapped to her belt at all times. I approached the boathouse, a sagging wooden structure half submerged at the water's edge. Its paint had long since peeled away, revealing mottled planks grayed by time and rot. The lake lapped gently against the supporting posts, whispering secrets I almost expected to hear. I unclipped my flashlight and swept its beam across the slanted floorboards. Nothing obvious, no personal item, no badge. My breath caught as I noticed a faint glint between 2 rotten boards at my feet. Kneeling, I pried them apart with my gloved hands. Beneath lay a tarnished deputy's badge, Model 214, number scratched off, but unmistakably the same design issued to Briggs. Its surface was corroded, the eagle's wings dulled to soft outlines against the tarnish. I pressed the metal to my palm, feeling the cold weight of her absence, the unfinished case etched into every groove. I looked up and, for the first time, felt watched. Half hidden in the shadows of the boathouse frame stood a figure, shoulders hunched and hat brim low. My hand flew to my holster, and I leveled my flashlight. The beam illuminated an empty space. Whoever had followed me melted away like morning mist. My heart hammered against my ribs. Compulsively, I checked my radio. Silence. The station had received my earlier calls. Photos, journals, uniforms, toolkits, and our labs were buzzing with activity. Now, though, I was alone at the water's edge with one badge and the promise of one last victim. Carefully, I slid the badge into an evidence bag and retraced my steps back toward the main trail. The boathouse sat behind me, silent as a closed coffin, but I couldn't shake the conviction that something wanted me to leave. The final message had said only, "She held the badge in her hand." In that moment I understood. Briggs had found something, some truth, just before she vanished. And the tipster had preserved that truth for me, knowing I would understand its importance. Further along the shore, moonlight and mist gave way to blushing sunrise. I stopped at the edge of a small inlet where cattails quivered in the breeze. The water here was shallower and muddier, and the bottom was strewn with fallen leaves and broken reeds. Kneeling, I ran my gloved fingers through the muck, searching for anything that didn't belong. Silt slid between my fingers, cold as ashes. Then my hand closed around something firm and round, a tarnished flashlight cylinder. I hauled it free, Briggs's flashlight. The battery compartment had corroded, but I pried it open to find a folded scrap of paper jammed inside. My pulse surged as I unfolded it. A crudely drawn map of the park with a single red X marking a spot beneath a toppled cedar tree, and these words scrawled in hurried pen: "Find my truth." No signature, no dates. I pocketed the map and stood, scanning the tree line. A cedar, downed decades ago, lay across the path like a barricade, its branches splayed like broken arms. I ducked beneath the trunk and followed the map's directions. 50 paces east, then 20 north into a copse of saplings. With each step, the forest seemed to hush, as if breathing held tight in anticipation. Then I saw it. A rusted fire pit, ringed by half-burned logs and flattened cans, long unused. In the center lay porcelain shards, bits of a fractured doll's face, its cheek painted a ghostly white, and beside them, a blood-stained scrap of Briggs's uniform cuff. My stomach clenched. Whoever had left these clues had collected every token of the missing women, arranging them here in the cold embrace of the woods. The doll fragments matched the one I'd found in Ella Whitaker's barn. Now they lay scattered where Briggs's life ended. I collected the shards and cuff, fingers trembling, and stuffed the detritus into my pack. As I did, my flashlight's beam caught a small wooden box half buried under pine needles. I pried it open with a brush of my fingertip. Inside lay a single recording device, a battered microcassette recorder with Briggs's badge clipped to its side. The type tab was broken, but the cassette faced upward as if daring me to listen. Back in my cruiser, I connected the recorder to my squad's portable speaker. Static hissed. Then Briggs's voice, calm yet urgent. "Deputy Reed, if you're hearing this, I'm gone." I found him, our killer. He used his badge to shield himself, to silence us. "I've documented everything. I'm sorry I didn't trust it sooner. Follow the lab results, follow the badge. You'll find his name in blood and paper. Promise me you'll finish this." Then only silence. broken by the recorder's rattle as it reached its end. I pressed my fist against the steering wheel, fighting back a wave of nausea. The tipster's final clue had been pointing me here, to Briggs's own voice, her confession recorded in the woods where she took her last breath. But the killer remained unnamed. Their identity was etched in Briggs' words, but I needed proof. And time was running out, because at the edge of the woods, the wind carried a soft crunch of footsteps, deliberate and slow. I snapped off the recorder and reached for my sidearm. The forest beyond the windshield shimmered with dawn light and shadow. And there, in the periphery, I saw a figure emerge. A man, in a dark coat, badge pinned to his chest, face cast in shadow. My heart hammered as recognition swept through me. An investigator I'd trusted, someone who'd helped me sift through each case file, someone with the access and the knowledge to bury evidence. He raised a gloved hand in greeting. "Deputy Reed," he said, voice low and calm, "you've done well. But every story has an end." My breath caught. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. The final twist I dreaded, the confrontation I'd prepared for, had arrived. And in that frozen moment I realized the cold case series I'd unraveled had led not only to forgotten victims, but to a killer wearing the very badge meant to protect them. The forest held its breath as morning fully broke, and I knew the truth was there, just beyond the glass. Unresolved, chilling, and poised to shatter whatever trust I had left. The first shot of movement came at the water's edge, his silhouette bending to retrieve something glinting in the pale sunrise. My hand tightened on the holster, but I didn't draw. My heart pounded so hard I could taste its cadence. He straightened, the badge pinned low on his jacket catching the dawn light. Sheriff's cap badge, the gold-trimmed edges worn smooth. I eased the door open and killed the engine, stepping onto the soggy ground. Water lapped at the cruiser's tires, reeds whispering around my legs. He watched me come, expression unreadable, eyes hidden under the brim. My voice came low. "Why, Carter?" He did not flinch at the name, as though he'd been waiting for it. "You know too much," he said, voice even. "But you're the only one I trust to finish this." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. Carter had been my mentor, the veteran detective who first taught me to dust for prints, to read a crime scene like Braille. I'd worked side by side with him on Jennings, Martinez, Alvarez, and all the forgotten names. Every time evidence vanished, he was the one who quietly filed it away, for further research. He lifted a slim notebook edged in water stains, the same black notebook I'd once thought belonged to Greer. "These pages," he said, opening the cover to reveal scrawled names and locations, "are not trophies. They're my confession." I looked down at the recorder in my hand, Briggs's voice still wet in my ears. "You recorded her," I said. "Yet you never went to the lab. You never filed charges." He closed the notebook, eyes glinting. Briggs was honest. Briggs was brave. But Briggs was a kid who nearly unraveled everything. I couldn't have that. "You're different, Reed. You understand justice is not always kind." Every instinct screamed at me to cuff him, but I remembered the warmth of his guidance, the toast he raised to my promotion. Every piece of evidence I'd uncovered passed through his hands. For years, I'd thought him my greatest ally. Now I realized his loyalty had been to something far darker. He dropped the notebook at my feet. "Read it. Each name, each site. It's every crime I uncovered, every victim I could not save through normal channels. My way was clean. Find them, expose them, leave them where they could no longer hurt anyone." I hesitated as I stooped for the notebook. Carter took a step back toward the boathouse. "You'll see," he said, voice tight. "They'll be found because of me." the reeds rustled. A breeze stirred the lake. In the distance, sirens wailed, backup finally arriving. I looked toward them, then back at Carter, torn between duty and betrayal. He kicked at the badge I'd bagged earlier. She held it in her hand, he whispered, echoing Briggs's last words. She believed in the badge. I couldn't break her faith, so I broke her silence. My hand hovered above my holster. Every cold gust of wind felt like a warning. This man had guarded these secrets longer than the department had even known they existed. Yet here he stood, offering me the rationale for each atrocity, his mind woven around the notion of a vigilante justice that spared no one. Lights bounced over the water as deputies swarmed the shoreline. Officer Jacobs called through the trees. "Deputy Reed, we've got perimeter set. We're moving in." Carter looked at me once more, regret softening his features. "Finish it, Reed," he said. "Tell them why." I drew my sidearm, voice steady but low. "You're under arrest, William Carter, for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and accessory to the disappearances of 6 victims. You have the right to remain silent." He let out a soft, sad laugh, no challenge, no fear. As the handcuffs clicked shut, I read him his rights through the whine of engines and the rustle of reeds. In his final gaze, I saw relief and resignation tangled together. They led him away across the dew-damp grass, and I watched until he vanished among uniforms and the press awaiting headlines. Then I sank to one knee at the edge of the boathouse, the badge, and all the shattered trust it symbolized, glinting in my palm. Behind me, the notebook lay open on the grass. Under the slanted beams of the boathouse, the shadows lengthened, and I realized with a chill that Carter's confessions, once published, would rip open old wounds across the county. Justice, delivered at last, would come at the cost of every belief I'd held about loyalty in the badge. The forest seemed to exhale as sunrise spilled gold across the lake. In the hush that followed, I closed the notebook, lifted the antique badge, and whispered, more to myself than anyone, "Rest now, all of you. I'll carry this truth, however heavy, until my last breath." The final chapter of these cold cases had been written in blood, ash, and brittle paper. But the real story, why we protect the powerless, how easily a badge can be stained, and what it truly means to deliver justice, would echo long after the daughter of the sheriff's department was found, after the bones and the dolls and the lost voices were finally given names. And in that echo, I vowed to keep listening for the ones still waiting to be heard. I step away from the boathouse and follow the narrow game trail into the heart of DeWitt Park's denser woods, where the lake's hush gives way to the choir of hidden wildlife. The morning sun, now climbing toward its zenith, filters through trembling leaves, scattering mottled light across the undergrowth. Every footfall presses into soft earth, each step a careful negotiation between the living and the dead. I know this path without realizing it. Decades ago, patrol routes ran here, and the crumbling remains of an old ranger's cabin lie just off the main trail, half swallowed by moss and bramble. My heart pounds as the map from Briggs's recorder pulses in my mind. 50 paces east from the cedar's uprooted trunk, then 20 north into the sapling thicket. I count each step in my head, boots sinking into leaf litter that squishes through my SWA T-style soles. At the 20th step I halt, every sense alert. Birdsong hushed, breeze paused, the forest holding its breath. Through dense saplings, I glimpse the corrugated roof of a small structure I never knew existed. A former game warden's storage shed, hidden from sight and memory. The shed door hangs ajar, its rusted hinges singing a metallic lament with each gust. I push it open, and the stench of damp wood and stale air washes over me. Inside, shafts of light through cracked boards illuminate a single workbench, atop which sits an assortment of objects arranged with deliberate care. First, a battered lunchbox, its paint chipped, revealing bare metal, lined with scraps of newspaper clippings, faded headlines about missing persons, enclosed in yellowed tape. I recognize one clipping, Ella Whitaker's disappearance notice from 2012. Next to it, an old map of Prescott County marked with red circles around the fairgrounds, the logging trail, the meatpacking shed, and the quarry. My flashlight beam shifts to a second grouping on the bench. 4 tarnished badges, each missing its serial number, laid out in a neat row. From left to right, Model 214, Briggs's, Model 311, Ellis County, Model 215, our own department's deputy badge, and Model 112, State Trooper. They gleam dimly in the weak light, like ancient coins forfeited at a crossroads. Beneath the badges rests a small stack of index cards. On each, a victim's name and date of disappearance, scrawled in elegant cursive. Ella Whitaker, November 5, 2012. Mari Alvarez, May 23, 2011. Luther Jensen, September 17, 2007. Anna Chen, August 14, 2005. Lauren Briggs, October 2, 2010. My pulse rattles in my ears. 5 names, 5 victims. I count 6 before me. The last card is blank, save for a single word, witness. I swallow hard. A witness card, meaning one more person experienced something so unspeakable they survived. The tipster's promise of 6 victims resurfaces. 6 forgotten souls. I step closer and find a final item tipped on the edge of the bench. A battered GNOME brand police radio. Its antenna bent, keypad worn smooth. I key the mic, static, then a faint click, then a voice, female, breathy. Mark, read, they'll never know. The transmission cuts out. Every hair on my neck stands on end. I clamp my hand over the radio, my glove slick with sweat. Whoever arranged this meticulous shrine of evidence has orchestrated my every move, leading me here to see these tokens of death and survival. And the witness remains alive, somewhere out there, waiting, or perhaps trapped in plain sight. I step out of the shed, my mind racing. The world beyond the door seems different. The trees taller, the shadows deeper, the morning light colder. I check my watch, nearly noon, but the forest feels suspended in perpetual twilight. I know I cannot leave without confronting what lies ahead. The map, clipped to the shed wall, shows a narrow footpath twisting south toward the shoreline where Briggs vanished. That must be the route, the place where the witness lingers. Down the trail I go, every sense raw. The canopy closes overhead, funneling the light into green-tinged beams. Ferns brush against my legs, releasing moisture that beads on my sleeves. I stumble over a thick root and catch myself, breath catching in my chest. Ahead, the trail forks. One path leading toward an area choked by fallen pines, the other sloping gently back toward the park road. The map's faint red line traces the left fork, into the pines. I take it. Branches snag my coat, the air grows cooler, the ground looser as pine needles cushion my boots. At the heart of the grove, I find a natural clearing. A circle of stones, perhaps used long ago by campers, now serving as an altar to secrets. In the center, half buried in acidic soil, lies a battered notebook, its cover cracked and stained. I kneel and brush away the needles, flipping it open to reveal page after page of trembling script. I saw him that night. He moved like water, silent and dark. He pulled her under before I could reach the shoreline, before the radio crackled, before my flashlight blinked out. I ran, but I heard her last words. Mark, help. The handwriting shifts lower on the page. scrawled almost illegible. I waited here, hidden, too terrified to call out. I still see her face emerging from the water, reaching for the badge. He left me behind and no one believed me. I write in secret, hoping someone will find the truth. You must finish it, Mark. You must save me before it's too late. My breath hitches. This witness, someone who survived Lauren's fate, has been hiding here, writing their confession in fear and isolation. My hand trembles as I close the notebook, heart pounding with both relief and dread. If I can find them, I can confirm the final piece, a direct witness to the killer's last attack. I lift my head and call softly, "I'm here. I'm on your side." My voice echoes, swallowed by trees. Moments later, a rustle, a footstep behind a clump of ferns. I sweep my flashlight toward the sound. Through the bracken emerges a woman's silhouette, eyes wide and hollow, clutching a soggy jacket to her chest. Her hair drapes over her face like dead vines. She steps into the beam, pale skin smeared with mud, hands stained brown, eyes darting. She meets my gaze, and for a heartbeat I see despair, relief, and terror collide in her eyes. "You found me," she whispers. "You finally found me." I lower my flashlight and kneel, offering my hand. "I'm Deputy Reed. I'm here to help." Her shoulders shake, but she takes my hand. "He'll come back," she murmurs. "He promised no one would believe me. He always returns." I help her to her feet, pressing the notebook into her hand. "Not this time," I say. "You're safe now." Behind us, the forest remains silent, the clearing still bearing witness to years of hidden horrors. I reach for my radio, calling in the rescue team and state investigators. This time, I hold the evidence close. The badges, the notebook, her testimony. The final victim has been found alive, her truth preserved in trembling ink and mud. Proof that justice can emerge even from the darkest places. As the first rescue lights penetrate the grove, I take one last look at the circle of stones, the altar of secrets. 6 victims remembered, 1 witness saved, and a killer brought to account. The cold cases are no longer buried. Their voices echo through the woods, carried on the wind, finally heard at last. I guide her slowly out of the clearing, every sense alert to the muted sounds of the forest closing in around us. Behind us, the rescue team's lights pierce the undergrowth in wavering beams, and I can hear them calling her name softly, checking that she's unharmed. I stay close, my hand on hers to steady her steps, noticing how her fingers tremble around the soaked notebook. Her eyes, wide, haunted, never leave the shattered badges laid out behind us. As we near the park road, the morning sun breaks fully through the trees, casting long, dancing shadows across the leaf-strewn path. The witness, whom I now learn is named Sarah Greaves, hovers between relief and terror, glancing over her shoulder as though the pines themselves might step forward, shape into that silent predator she survived. One of the rescuers, Officer Jennings, kneels beside her, checking for injuries. Sarah hands him the notebook, her voice small. This is everything. The names, the dates, where he hid them. I watch Jennings cradle the notebook like a fragile relic, nodding as he slips on gloves. Behind us, deputies fan out, securing the perimeter and marking the location of the altar shed as a crime scene. They photograph the badges and index cards, dust for prints on the radio and the lunchbox, bag each item in Tyvek evidence bags stamped with case numbers. The forest is suddenly alive with professional urgency. I kneel beside Sarah and press a gentle hand to her shoulder. "You're safe now," I say. "We're going to take you somewhere warm. You'll be protected. No one can hurt you again." She nods, but her eyes remain fixed on the trees, as though she fears I, or someone else, might vanish into the undergrowth at any moment. An ambulance arrives, its siren finally silenced by distance. Medics step out with blankets and hot drinks. I help Sarah climb onto a stretcher, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. The medic asks gentle questions: her name, age, date of disappearance, and I fill in the rest, reciting dates from the index cards. Ella Whitaker, Mari Alvarez, Luther Jensen, Anna Chen, Deputy Lauren Briggs. 5 names. Sarah is the 6th, the lone survivor, the witness whose silence for 15 years concealed this string of murders. As Sarah is lifted into the ambulance, I step back to survey the scene. The clearing is now a busy tableau. Uniformed officers snapping photographs, evidence techs measuring distances, detectives consulting maps clipped to portable whiteboards. Next to the shed, already tagged for expedited forensic processing, stand 2 state investigators in dark suits. One nods to me. I approach. "Deputy Reed," she says, extending a gloved hand. "FBI Special Agent Whitman, you have a commendation coming your way." I take her hand, grimly aware that the commendation will feel hollow until all this is processed, until every trace of scent, fiber, fingerprint, and scrap of paper is cataloged. I turn to glance at the fallen cedar trunk, at the circuit of stones, at the empty shed door swinging on its rusted hinges. The forest seems to hold its breath, as if waiting. Agent Whitman clears her throat. "We'll need you to walk us through your steps. Every location, every clue. Your report will form the backbone of our case file." I nod and glance at my watch. Almost 1 p.m. 4 hours since I found Sarah's badge, 8 hours since the barn. 24 hours since the first Polaroid appeared on my porch. The investigation has unfolded too quickly, too painfully. I look past the crime scene tape toward the ambulance, where Sarah's pale face can be seen through the window, pressed against the glass as she watches me. I give her a small nod. She closes her eyes, resting her head against the seat, trusting me to carry her truth forward. Agent Whitman leans in. "There's one more thing," she says quietly. "The missing podcast recorder, Briggs's cassette recorder, you retrieved it, yes?" I pull the battered recorder from my jacket pocket. Its microcassette still inside bears Briggs's voice and the crackling confession. She nods. "We'll need the tape and the recorder, and the notebook Sarah wrote in." I hand both over. The agent wraps them in foil-lined evidence pouches, as though protecting them from every possible taint of contamination. I step aside to gather my own thoughts. The final piece of evidence, the notebook Sarah penned, has the power to convict, to finally name the man behind 6 disappearances. William Carter, former sheriff's detective who betrayed every oath he took. Yet there remains a gnawing uncertainty. If Carter believed he was delivering justice, who guided him to these victims? Who arranged for the doll in the barn, the photographs under the carousel's concrete pad, the journal in the trailer park, the fabric on the highway, the tools in the logging camp, the badge at the boathouse, and then Sarah's location in this hidden clearing? The shadowy tipster who directed me at every turn has vanished as quietly as they appeared. No fingerprints, no DNA, no email or phone number, just a series of clues calculated to expose the killer's crimes without ever revealing the informant's identity. My radio crackles. "Reed, we found something you should see at the lab." It's Sergeant Moreno, voice clipped. I acknowledge and finish surveying the scene. The forest has begun to recede from this place of horror, but I know the secrets it holds will haunt me and the department for years to come. As I walk back along the tape-lash road toward my cruiser, I pass the evidence markers, 1 for the lunchbox, 2 for the badges, 3 for the Polaroids, 4 for the shovel hole at the logging camp, 5 for the boathouse badge, 6 for the witness notebook. 6 markers for 6 lives touched by violence and secrecy. I pause at the last marker, where a small wooden stake holds a yellow plastic flag. I bend and pick it up, tucking it into my pocket. The sky overhead is now a clear, pale blue, betraying nothing of the darkness that unfolded beneath the trees. The quiet lake lies to my left, its surface as smooth as glass. And I realize this: though we have unearthed every victim, rescued the sole survivor, and arrested the man who wore the badge, there remains one final, unresolved truth, whispered in the hush between the pines. My phone buzzes. A text message, no number. Thank you, Mark. Rest now. I stare at the words, cold dread curdling in my stomach. Who sent it? Sarah, Carter, the anonymous ally who guided me through 6 cold cases, or the killer's accomplice still free, watching from the shadows? I tuck the phone away and drive off, headlights carving twin ribbons of light through the morning mist. As I pass the entrance to DeWitt County Park, the wind carries a faint echo of children's laughter, distant, chilling, half forgotten. And I know that even after all this, the forest still holds its secrets, because justice may have caught its prey, but the darkness that hides behind a badge, that darkness never truly vanishes. I hear the drone of the engine before I see the lights of my cruiser sliding across the dark ribbon of a highway. Rain hisses against the windshield wipers as I guide the vehicle onto the shoulder near the abandoned trailer lot. My hand hovers over the door handle. Cold seeps through the fabric of my uniform, reminders of why I left home before dawn for this. No partner tonight, just me and the cases that swirl in my mind like the storm overhead. I unlatch my belt, grab the flashlight, and step into the wet grass. The trailers stand like empty husks, windows dark, doors hanging ajar on rusted hinges. I pause at the first unit, watching for signs of recent life. Footprints, a stray cigarette butt, fresh trash. Nothing. I move on, each beam of light revealing peeling paint, battered walls, jagged glass. My radio clicks faintly in my pocket, static, then my own voice. Deputy Larkin here, I'm on scene. No answer expected, just protocol. At the edge of the lot, a single trailer sits isolated, wheels sunk into the mud. Its doors closed, hinges stiff. I knock once, the sound echoes hollowly. Silence. I press my ear against the cold metal and catch, breathing. No, wind rattling the roof. Still, something draws me closer. I flip the handle and push. The door groans, revealing an interior thick with dust and the stale tang of mildew. My flashlight, clawing at the darkness, shows a small living room. Threadbare couch, a table stacked with yellowing newspapers, a single porcelain doll perched on the windowsill. I remember the Morales file. Lily's broken doll, found in grass by a farmhouse. I breathe slowly, chest tightening. I sweep the beam past empty walls scrawled with graffiti, illicit symbols I can't make sense of. My gut tells me I'm too close to something old, something that should have stayed buried. I move deeper, each step stirring dry leaves and rat droppings. In the back bedroom, I find a mattress on the floor, sheets stained brown. On the pillow rests a small journal, its spiral binding rusted shut. I slip on gloves and pry it open. Scribbled entries leap out. Dates from 2015. Initials S.N. the Drifter, Samson, who vanished after wandering these parts. His scrawled words mention a girl waiting by moonlight's curve, then trailing off into ink blots like spilled blood. I snap photos, heart hammering. Samson's case was supposed to be minor. Now it feels like the epicenter of every cold case I've chased. I hear a noise behind me, metal scraping on metal. I whirl, flashlight slicing through the gloom, but see only the entrance, swaying. Then the trailer door slams shut. My radio crackles, but no one's there. My hand goes instinctively to my sidearm as I approach the door. I twist the knob, locked. Rain drips through gaps in the frame, pooling at my feet. My breath clouds the beam of light. I hammer on the door. It rattles, but won't budge. I take a step back, scanning the room. That doll on the sill seems to stare. I inch toward the window and try the latch, jammed. A corner of the room feels colder, as if something gathered there unseen. Years ago, I learned to trust these gut instincts. They've saved me more times than any tool. My flashlight flickers. Static seeps from the radio, a faint voice whispering, "Help me. Please." My pulse spikes. I press the speaker, voice trembling. "This is Deputy Larkin. Who are you?" The static surges, then clears just enough. "Find her. Before he returns." The words vanish into a shriek of interference. Then silence, absolute and heavy. I grip the journal tighter. Sampson's last note mentioned a rusted hatch behind this very trailer, leading to a service tunnel network once used by meth labs years ago. I crouch, sweep the floor until my light lands on a loose floorboard. I pry it up to reveal a trapdoor, its edges sealed with gunk and grime. A lock hangs from a single loop. I draw my knife, snip through the corroded chain, and lift the door. A staircase of rotten wood descends into darkness. I radio dispatch. "I've found a tunnel entrance," requesting backup and K9. No reply, just the echo of my own voice. I stare into the black pit. The beam doesn't reach the bottom. Every instinct screams to call it in, wait for more help. But I've chased too many cold cases already. Lily Morales, the Woods victim. Amber Lowe at the fair. Sampson. Each one left me sleepless, clinging to fragmented clues. Maybe this is where it all converges. This rotten opening, this dusty journal, this doll. I exhale, fist tightening around the torch. I descend the steps. Wood creaks ominously beneath me. Dampness rises, carrying the scent of rot and decay. My flashlight lights the walls. Concrete marred by graffiti. A child's handprint in faded white. The initials EN scrawled beneath it. My blood runs cold. Everett Nash, the Woods victim, known for carrying a charm engraved with those letters. I lower the journal leather side down, matching the map drawn on its last page. A jagged arrow points deeper. I pause mid-step, hearing movement ahead, a shuffle like someone dragging a leg. My heart hammers. I whisper, "Deputy Larkin, Summit County Sheriff's Department. If you're hurt, I'm here to help." No response. Just the echo of my own voice, twisted by the tunnel's curve. I swallow hard, moving forward until the beam catches a shape. A pale, lifeless dress hanging from a pipe, torn at the hem, caked in earth. Beneath it, the porcelain doll from the trailer's window, lying face down, hair matted with mud. I kneel and pick it up. The face is cracked, eyes lifeless, but somehow knowing. I flip it over and find scratched into its back. "Find her." My radio crackles again. Static, then my partner Santos's voice. "Urgent. Deputy, we're on standby at the lot." ETA, 2 minutes. Relief washes over me, but it's short-lived. As I turn to leave, the floor trembles, like a distant footstep, heavy and deliberate. I shine the light down the tunnel, but the darkness seems to swallow the beam whole. I pocket the doll, rising slowly. A whisper travels along the damp wall, barely audible. Too late. I sprint back up the stairs, bursting through the hatch into the trailer. The door flies open as I push it, rain striking me like needles. I don't stop to look back. I race across the lot, slipping in the mud, adrenaline fueling me until the headlights of backup flood the scene. They find me hunched over, clutching the doll, eyes wide in the storm's glow. My gloves are caked with dirt and something darker. Santos calls out, but I barely hear him over the pounding rain and the echoing cry of that voice. Find her, before he returns. The moment the rain-drenched deputies arrived, I didn't waste time with formalities. I handed off the porcelain doll, its painted eyes chipped, hair tangled, and motioned toward the hatch. There's a tunnel beneath that trailer, I said, voice low. It links to a whole network. We need to secure it before anyone else goes down there. Santos's flashlight beam pitched across the lot, illuminating rusted sides and half-buried tires. Behind us, the backup cruiser's lights painted the trailers in staccato red and blue flashes. Inside the nearest cruiser, I recognized the tech van my geologist friend had loaned us months ago. Ground-penetrating radar, motion sensors, a portable generator. We hustled equipment across muddy ground, careful not to slip. By the time we were back at the hatch, a small command post had formed. Evidence markers, yellow tape fluttering in the wind. Deputies in raincoats poring over maps. I dropped to my knees, braced the metal hatch open, and shone my flashlight into the darkness below. The tunnel yawned, mouth black and wet. A musty odor crawled out, a mixture of mildew, rot, and something more metallic that pricked at the back of my throat. Santos flicked on the headlamp I handed him. Together, we descended. The wood groaned, each step echoing down the wet shaft like a ticking clock. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a low-ceiling corridor. Damp walls dripped, and the floor sloped slightly towards some central drain. I clicked on my hazmat-grade lamp. Its light cut a cone through the stale air. Stray wires dangled overhead, and I could make out sections of concrete and corrugated metal patched together. Proof this network had been expanded over years. Meth labs, bootleg operations, who knew what else? But now it served something far older and more insidious. I crouched to examine footprints pressed into the mud. 2 sets, one large, heavy work boots, the other small, bare, a girl's slipper-patterned print. Lily again, or someone following in her footsteps. My pulse clenched. Santos ran the radar plate against the opposite wall. On his monitor, a ghostly outline flickered, a room sealed behind a false wall. I pointed. He marked it on the digital map. We advanced slowly, light beams dancing over faded graffiti, cryptic words. Justice, she waits, he comes, carved into the concrete. Each symbol twisted like a claw in my mind. My gut tightened as we reached the false wall. Concrete blocks set against the original stone, mortar cracked. I knelt, testing the edge loose. Move the barrier, I said, voice a whisper. Santos and another deputy yanked at the blocks. They clattered free, revealing a narrow chamber beyond. In the center lay a dusty mattress, a child's blanket draped over it, faded and frayed. The smell of old sweat and mildew hung heavy. At the foot of the mattress, a rusted metal chest sat on a platform. The chest was covered in etchings, EN, LM, AL, the initials of my 4 cold cases. Everett Nash, Lily Morales, Amber Lowe. My hand went to my holster as if expecting danger, but the chamber was silent except for the steady drip of water. I knelt and examined the lock, old, corroded. Santos passed me bolt cutters. The lock snapped open with a metallic crack that echoed down the tunnel like gunfire. I lifted the lid. Inside lay 24 yellowed folders, each tab labeled with a case number and name. I lifted the top folder. Colton, Davis, June 15, 1976. Beneath it, Morales, Lily, August 17, 2011. Then, unknown male, November 5th, 2012. Low, Amber, August 23rd, 2014. Samson, October 12th, 2015. The folders were bound with rubber bands, coffee rings marking earlier reviews. I flipped through pages, crime scene photos, witness statements, evidence logs, everything I'd seen in my office, but here it was updated, annotated in neat, precise script. Notes I'd never made. An addendum on Lily's file. A path mapped through the silos, stopping at a corner of an abandoned dairy. Coordinates I'd never considered. A note in Sid's handwriting. My partner Santos. Check sewer line under trailer lot. My own file bore a post-it I'd never written. Follow breath pattern in Pine Grove Woods. Possible hidden chamber. I slammed the folder shut, heart pounding. This isn't just a dump of old files, I said, voice tight. Someone's been watching us, feeding us clues, guiding us. Santos placed a hand on my shoulder. What's next, deputy? I exhaled, scanning the chest. Beneath the folders, in the velvet-lined bottom, lay a small ampoule, dark liquid sealed inside, and a single Polaroid. It showed me, taken from behind, standing beside the silo at midnight, flashlight in hand, the doll at my feet. The Polaroid was dated 2 nights ago. Someone followed me down the highway. Someone waited for me. My radio crackled. Deputy Larkin, command, status update. The crackle of fake calm in the dispatcher's voice pulled me back. We found a hidden chamber under the trailer, I said. We've got files and evidence. Need forensics, full hazmat, the works. Understood. ETA 15 minutes, back up en route. I turned back to Santos, jaw tight. We need to secure these and get them out of here. My eyes returned to the folders. Something on the final page of Lily's folder caught my eye. A photograph of her doll beside a small carved stone that I'd seen in the woods years ago, perched on a survey marker. The note read, "Not buried. Never buried." I shook my head, mind racing. Lily's remains weren't under that farmhouse silo. They were somewhere else entirely, some place I'd overlooked. We packed the folders into evidence bags, tagging each with new barcodes, but I couldn't stop staring at that Polaroid. Someone had been here recently, long enough to hide these files, to take my picture, then vanish. The would-be protector or predator. I wasn't sure. Pulled away, I slipped the porcelain doll into my pocket. Comfort for the ghosts, or bait for whoever lurked in the dark? I didn't know. All I knew was I couldn't turn back now. Not when every ruined folder and cracked doll stitched together a tapestry of buried crimes, and pointed straight at me. I started the engine, headlights slicing through the mist. Radio silence now, as if the storm had swallowed every frequency. The deputy's seat felt stiff against my spine, my mind spinning through coordinates, case notes, and the Polaroid's blurred figure. I pressed the accelerator and rolled onto the highway. Ahead lay the abandoned dairy, Lily's new coordinates, and beyond that, the county fairgrounds at dawn, the overgrown woods, the sealed mine shaft. 6 sights, 6 wounds in the earth, and one unseen hand guiding me from the shadows. As the road stretched out in front of me, I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing the doll's chipped cheek. I closed my eyes for a moment, listening for her whisper. The dashboard clock blinked 5:12. Daylight was hours away, and somewhere in that darkness waited the next clue. A final piece that would tie every frayed thread together, or shatter what remained of my sanity. The sun's first pale light had just begun to seep into the sky by the time I rolled up the cracked driveway of the Richards Dairy. The site marked in Lily Morales' file as abandoned, coordinates 39.4127, -106.0845. My headlights illuminated the faded silo, its corrugated metal sides streaked with rust, and the low stone barn where Lily's porcelain doll had originally been found. Mud clung to the treads of my tires, and a cool breeze carried the scent of hay and something fouler. Old incense, maybe, or something burned long ago. I left the cruiser running for light and grabbed my flashlight, radio, and the folder bearing Lily's new coordinates from the tunnel chest. The folder's tab was freshly reinforced with white tape beneath the old yellow, and beneath it I'd placed my own post-it. Search beneath West Silo Hatch. Santos and the forensics team were due to arrive by 7 a.m., but I couldn't wait. Each second risked losing whatever lay hidden here. Mud spurted beneath my boots as I crossed the yard toward the west silo. Its hatch was near ground level, half buried in weeds that had grown up around it since the dairy's closure in 2009. I knelt and brushed away dead grass, exposing the hatch's circular iron wheel. My fingertips traced the grooves worn smooth by time before I placed my flashlight beside me and began to pry. The hatch resisted, old hinges creaking, but after a minute's work it gave way with a reluctant groan. Below, a shaft descended into darkness. The air that rose to greet me was musty, faintly sweet, and carried the whisper of old dairy machinery. Gears, pistons, valves, all silent now. I grabbed the rope ladder Santos's team had left and began my descent. Wood slats bound by fraying rope swung beneath my weight. Each foothold felt precarious. Halfway down, I paused, beam sweeping the shaft walls. Scrawled in chalk at the eye level were two letters, L.M. Beneath them, an arrow pointed forward. At the bottom, the floor sloped away into a vaulted chamber. My lamp revealed rows of rusted pipes arching overhead like the ribs of some long-dead beast. The ground was pocked with footprints. Multiple sizes, adult and small, layered over years of mud inflow. My breath wove with the stale air as I stepped off the ladder. The beam swept across a low table against the far wall, where stacks of tin milk canisters sat in neat rows. A single canister lay on its side, lid slightly ajar. I moved to the table, gloved hands steady despite the tight knot in my stomach. Inside the fallen canister, wrapped in oilcloth, was another journal. Different from Samson's, sleeker, leather-bound. I unwrapped it and flipped it open. The first entry dated June 5th, 2011, 13 days before Lily disappeared. The writer detailed secret milk testing operations for a nearby corporate farm. Contaminants, toxins, hidden to preserve profits. The penmanship was neat, each line ruled by purpose. But the later entries, dated July 20th, 2011, were frantic, pages smeared. The writer claimed to have uncovered evidence that county officials were dumping toxic waste in the silo's drainage system, a system that ran directly under the barn's foundation. I realized why Lily's doll had been found here. She must have dropped it unwittingly while investigating. The next entry was the last, a scrawled note that read simply, "They know I'm here. Must hide." I snapped photos of the entry and closed the journal carefully. A sudden drip of water echoed through the chamber, followed by another, then a steady patter. Water seeped from a crack in the ceiling, dripping onto the table. I looked up to see a narrow grate high above. Through it, I glimpsed the barn floor. Overgrown weeds, broken boards. Nothing to hint at what lay below. But I noticed a second chalk scrawl near the grate. "She's gone deep. Follow the pipes." I traced the pipes with my light. They twisted down the chamber's length, disappearing into a dark archway at the far end. I keyed the mic on my radio. Deputy Larkin to command. Found ledger implicating county officials in toxic waste dumping. Structural maze of drainage pipes runs into archway. Request hazmat techs and structural engineers. Static filled my ear, then Santos's voice. Copy that. ETA 5 minutes. I pocketed the journal, moved toward the archway, and ducked under a low pipe insulated with tattered cloth. Beyond was a narrow corridor carved out of bedrock, slick with runoff. My beam illuminated rusty valves and pressure gauges frozen at 0. I followed the corridor to its end, where water pooled and ran down a grated drain. The grate was backed by wet earth and roots. Kneeling, I cleared debris until my fingers found the cold metal bars. Through them, the earth shifted, as if someone or something stirred beneath. I pried at the grate, but it wouldn't budge. Instead, I turned my beam upward. Crisscrossing the chamber ceiling were old ventilation shafts covered by wire mesh. One mesh screen was bent inward, recently. I grabbed my flashlight and pressed upward, the mesh slicing my glove, but yielding to pressure. Above lay a narrow crawl space full of cobwebs and broken shards of porcelain. My light picked out a fractured piece of Lily's doll, her painted lips chipped. Beneath it lay a small skeletal hand. A child's glove, yellowed, no body inside. My breath caught. The glove must have slipped from the remains. I swept my light beyond the mesh and saw a narrow shaft sloping further upward, toward the barn floor. If I could climb through, I could reach the upper silo interior, where someone might have stashed evidence or even a body. I considered calling Santos, but that could risk contamination. I needed to see for myself. I hauled myself into the crawl space, scraping arms on wood splinters. My flashlight beam trembled as I squeezed through. Above, the silo's interior metal ring loomed, light filtering down through a rusted cap. I reached up and climbed through, emerging into a darkness only broken by a single beam of morning light from a crack in the silo wall. I was above the hatch, in the silo's dead center. The walls rose straight up like a cylinder of cold steel. At my feet lay fresh footprints in dust, bare, small, Lily's, and beside them, a fresh chalk mark scrawled on the wall. Nowhere is safe. Below me, the ground trembled, like a distant footfall. I froze, heart pounding. Somewhere down the corridor, water dripped in steady rhythm. I clicked off my radio, silence. I edged along a narrow ledge, reaching into my pocket for a piece of chalk to mark my own trail. My fingers brushed the cool metal. It was a ring, heavy, engraved with initials E.N., my own evidence recovered in the tunnel. I yanked my hand back. Someone had left it for me here. A sudden thud echoed beneath the silo floor, reverberating up the metal. The chalk scrawl above me shook. I dropped to my knees, eyes fixed on the inscription. Electricity cracked in the air, a distant rumble, though no thunder threatened. My flashlight flickered, then stabilized. In the beam's wake, I saw fresh writing below the first. And now, you. My breath caught in my throat. I scrambled back toward the crawl entrance, slipping on broken porcelain. My radio sparked to life, Santos's voice frantic. "Deputy, what's your status?" You went silent. I hit the mic, voice raw. "I'm in the silo, above the hatch. Found footprints in a ring. E.N., someone's toying with us." Static swallowed my words. I hit transmit again. "Santos, get a team here now." Silence answered. Then an almost imperceptible rasp of metal, like the silo cap grinding. I turned upward. A sliver of pale sky through the crack dimmed and brightened, as if the cap were shifting. My heart pounded. I grabbed the ring, slipping it into my pocket, and in that moment decided, if I was going to face whatever waited in the darkness, I needed all my wits. I crawled back down, dropping into the chamber just as the sun breached the horizon fully. Light slanted through the hatch, cutting across the floor in stark lines. The water in the corridor beyond glowed. I pulled myself out of the silo's maw, landing hard on the damp earth. Footsteps pounded above. Heavy boots. Santos's voice carried down. "Hang tight, team's on the way." I clutched the doll in one hand and the ring in the other, raincoat dampened by condensation. As I looked back at the silo's open hatch, the morning breeze sighed through it, carrying a final whisper. "Find me." The breath of old ghosts, the promise of another clue, and the pull of a story that wasn't over, would never be over, until every secret was unearthed, every victim found, every cold case laid to rest. But some things weren't meant for restful sleep. And as I stood there, feeling the weight of the ring in my palm, I knew the next section of this hunt would bring me face to face with truths that could shatter what remained of my world. The forensic team arrived just as dawn painted the horizon in bruised purples and gold. I stayed at the silo hatch's edge, cradling the porcelain doll and the engraved ring, listening to Santos direct the hazmat techs down the tunnel and then up into the silo's crawlspace. My legs felt like lead, every muscle taut with anticipation. I slipped the doll into an evidence bag, careful to retain the chalk dust on its chipped cheek, then dropped the ring onto a sterile tray. Santos looked up at me from beneath his respirator mask, his eyes shadowed, intense. Without a word, I followed him back into the barn, where we'd set up a makeshift command center inside the old milking parlor. Maps, charts, and case files were spread across folding tables. The ring lay between Lily's file and the charted path of the drainage pipes. I leaned over, tracing the carved initials E.N. with my fingertip. Everett Nash's charm. The same ring I'd found in the tunnel. Now, somehow, it had made its way to the silo. It struck me like a punch that these cases weren't just linked by tragedy, but by design. The hazmat techs emerged from the tunnel, blinking in the morning light. One handed me a soil sample taken beneath the barn's foundation. Another presented a tall canister tagged Journal Number 3. I set these beside the evidence tray. Every item bore a fresh label: silo hatch, tunnel chest, dairy chamber. The chain of custody was immaculate, yet the origins remained a mystery. I watched as the techs loaded samples into the back of the command van, sealed under lock. Then I heard someone grunt as they lifted the canister holding the leather-bound journal. It slipped from the pair of gloves and struck the ground with a dull thud. Santos and I both froze. The canister rolled, open, the journal's a corner slipping free. I caught it instinctively, flipping through the pages to the final, frantic entries. "These notes, they're my handwriting," I muttered, voice low. Santos leaned over my shoulder. "No, that's someone else's, but in your style. Look at the dates." The entries, all scrawled in familiar loops and lines, were dated the next day. June 13th, tomorrow's date. "I've found the final piece," the writing said. "He watches. I must find him before he finds me." Beneath it, a crude sketch. My cruiser, parked alone on the shoulder, headlights shining through rain. And there, in the sketch's shadowed glare, the silhouette of a man holding a doll. My breath caught. This journal had to be from someone watching me, anticipating my moves enough to write them down in real time. But who? Santos tapped my shoulder. "We're clear to excavate the pipe junction in the chamber, teams ready." I nodded, sliding the journal into an evidence bag. As the text moved back into the tunnel's mouth, I stepped aside, scanning the walls. The graffiti, "Justice, she waits, he comes," seemed newly sharpened, white chalk still gritty at the edges. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the whole silo held its breath. My pulse hammered. I followed Santos down the tunnel corridor to the chamber's far end. We crouched beside the sloping drain that led under the barn. The hazmat tech in charge knelt and pried at a sealed valve. We all held our breath as a hiss sounded. First, a ring of trapped air, then a spurt of murky water and sediment. Under the murk, something dark glinted. A small metal box, similar to the chest we'd found in the main tunnel but encrusted in sludge. We hauled the box free and set it on a plastic sheet. I cut the seals and lifted the lid. Inside lay an assortment of photographs. Grainy shots of abandoned silos, wooded lots, the county fairgrounds, and each photo had been taken from the same vantage point. Deputy Larkin's perspective. One showed me crouched in the tall grass by the silo hatch. Another, me examining the tunnel entrance. A third, me on the dairy barn roof. The final image was chilling. It was taken from inside my own cruiser. In the rearview mirror, I could see the reflection of a figure in rain gear, standing in the passenger seat, face obscured. I swallowed hard. My breath felt too loud. Santos peered over my shoulder. "He's been here," I said, voice raw. "He, whoever this is, has tracked every step." Behind us, the tunnel mouth gave a low groan, as if responding. A cold draft blew out of the corridor, carrying the unmistakable scent of tobacco and damp earth. I turned, flashlight beam tracking the black corridor. At its edge, I thought I saw movement, a flash of a figure slipping into the darkness, a ripple in the stale air. "Did you see that?" I asked, heart pounding. Santos nodded, hand on his holster. "Let's get back to the surface." We marched back through the dripping corridor, the weight of every unsolved case pressing on me. Emerging into the barn, daylight felt harsh and unforgiving. I backed away from the activation hatch, feeling vulnerable. The world here was too small, too claustrophobic, yet somehow another space waited beyond each corner. At the command post, I handed off the photographs, the box, the journal, and the canister journal. Then I stepped outside, needing air. The morning was cool, the sky clearing. My radio crackled. Dispatch asking for my ETA to process evidence. I flipped on the mic. "Deputy Larkin, I'm heading in now. I'll secure the silo perimeter and return to base." My voice sounded distant. I turned my gaze over the farmyard. Silos, barn, the fields beyond. Empty again, waiting. A sheet of metal clanged overhead as a breeze shifted the barn door. I felt a prickling at the back of my neck, as if someone were watching from the tree line. I slid my hand into my pocket, feeling the weight of the ring and then the doll's smooth cheek through the evidence bag. My breath caught in my throat. The doll's head, once cracked, was now whole, as if repaired by unseen hands. My fingers trembled, but I dared not look down at it again. In the distance, a branch snapped. My flashlight beam swept to the edge of the yard, nothing but empty grass. Then suddenly, a whisper drifted through the air, carried on the wind. "Now, finish it." My blood ran cold. I pressed my back against the barn wall, heart leaping. The wind died, the world held its breath. And as I stood there, alone beside the silo, I realized the final twist. This wasn't just a case of buried bodies or hidden journals. It was a game, engineered by someone who knew each move I would make before I made it. Whoever was behind this had crossed every threshold I set, invaded every space I cleared, and watched me beyond the safety of daylight. I drove through the low morning fog toward the county fairgrounds just after first light, the command van's red and blue lights trailing behind me like fireflies. My cruiser's headlights cut swaths through mist drifting over asphalt and grass. Everything was quiet now. The fair's carnival rides stood silent, their metal arms and cables frozen in place. Empty trailers rolled off to one side, and the Ferris wheel's gondolas hung like broken promises against a pale sky. I killed the engine and stepped onto cracked pavement, slip soles skidding slightly on dew-slicked weeds. Clutching the porcelain doll and engraved ring in one hand, the leather-bound journal in the other, I moved toward the old ticket booth where Amber Lowe had last been seen. The vendor's booth was locked, windows dark, but a child's whisper had drawn me here in the tunnel photographs. I pressed my ear to the glass. Nothing, only my own ragged breathing. I wiped the lens clean of condensation and spotted something pinned inside. A small scrap of paper, folded into a tight square. I pried the window lock open with my screwdriver, careful not to damage fingerprints, and reached inside. The note unfolded to reveal a crudely drawn map. The fairgrounds layout, marked with an X at the entrance to the petting zoo, Amber's last recorded location. Beneath the X, someone had scrawled, "Look beneath the hay." My pulse spiked. I snapped photos, bagged the original, then hurried down the overgrown path toward the fenced-off petting zoo pens where only the soft rustle of straw remained. I ducked under the sagging gate, flashlight beam dancing across empty troughs and scattered feed sacks. The straw smelled sweet, dusty. I knelt and shoved my hand between slats of rotting wood until my fingertips brushed something hard. I pried away the boards to reveal a narrow cavity carved into the earth. Inside lay a rusted metal lunchbox, its lid sealed with a latch. I pried it open and found Amber's stuffed panda. Its fur matted, one ear torn, a length of orange ribbon tied around its neck. I pressed the ribbon between thumb and forefinger. It was damp, smelling faintly of lavender and milk. Underneath the panda, wrapped in plastic, was a Polaroid. Amber standing smiling by the tilt-a-whirl, captured at twilight, no one else in the frame. I scrutinized the image. A shadowy figure loomed just beyond the ride's edge, too indistinct to make out, but the angle matched the camera's path. Beneath the Polaroid, scrawled in the same chalky white I'd seen in tunnels and silos, were words. "She waits behind the wheel." My radio crackled, Santos's voice low. "Deputy, the tech van's got new data on the pipes under that dairy. You're clear to head there next." I suppressed a groan. Between Lily's silo maze, the dairy's drainage shaft, and now Amber's fairground hiding spot, the puzzle pieces spun out beneath me. I tucked the panda into an evidence bag, clipping it closed, then radioed my location. At Fairgrounds. Be there shortly. And set off. Back in the cruiser, I studied the Polaroid again. The tilt-a-whirl, once a carousel of swirling lights, now looked ominous in the grainy shot, its cabins like coffin doors. The figure beyond it seemed to beckon. I backed the cruiser up to the ride, headlights grazing the chipped paint and peeling carnival banners. I cut the engine and approached, boots crunching gravel. The cabins hung empty, and the gear mechanism squealed softly as a stray gust turned the wheel in place. I shone my flashlight under each cabin until I found a loose floorboard in one. The wood lifted to reveal a metal grate. Too small for a person, but big enough for the lunchbox. I placed the Polaroid on the ground and knelt, breathing in the aroma of old popcorn and rust. I grew accustomed to these secret caches. Why here? Why that site? Someone was gathering every object that had touched the victims, hiding them in their own haunts to taunt me. Beneath the grate was a folded photo album, the covers damp and pages stuck together. I pried a corner free, carefully peeling back pages. Snapshots of me investigating each site, my face turned away, hands holding folders, flashlight beam illuminating features of the trailer, silo, dairy. The last photo showed me here, crouched under the tilt-a-whirl, the panda sealed in plastic at my side. Someone had followed me again, but this time not from behind. They'd been inside this ride, waiting. My radio crackled urgently. "Deputy Larkin, command. "We've got movement at the silo. Somebody's down there. You need to respond." I stared at the album, heart stuttering. Someone had breached our secured perimeter. I stuffed the album into the evidence bag and sprinted to the cruiser, adrenaline burning in my lungs. I skidded back through the fog toward the Richards Dairy. The path was a blurred corridor of silence. Occasionally, I glimpsed the silhouette of the Ferris wheel behind me through trees, its spokes creaking. My boots pounded, and I fumbled with the radio mic. "Santos, are you there? Who's moving?" Static. The darkness swallowed the reply. I reached the silo and found the hatch wide open, swaying as if struck by wind. Flashlights bobbed inside. Outside, the hazmat team's vehicles were idling in disarray, doors open, gear scattered. Deputy Santos emerged from the barn, face pale. He shook his head, stepping back into the shadows. "It's gone," he said, voice hollow. "The chest, the folders, we logged them, bagged them. We left them in the command van. Now they're gone." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, gone?" Santos looked back toward the tunnel entrance. "The van's here, but empty. No crates, no evidence tags. Just one of the crate's padlocks on the ground, keys missing." My breath caught. The only way someone could have taken them was through the tunnel or from inside the silo vault. I flicked on my flashlight and re-entered the barn, each step feeling heavier than the last. The command center was a ghost of its former self. Maps torn, case files shredded, chalk scrawls frenzied across tables. "I see you, don't follow. It's already over." I dropped to my knees and examined the shattered table. Amidst ripped paper and wood splinters lay a final message, written in a dripping black substance. "Thank you for playing." My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I grabbed the doll and ring from my coat pocket, clutching them like talismans against the storm of dread rising in my chest. I radioed in, voice cracking. "Deputy Larkin, command, respond." Static. I stumbled from the barn into the grassy yard, the dawn's light turning straw-colored under a bruised sky. Everywhere I turned, I saw shapes in the mist. Abandoned trailers, swaying swings, broken fences, each one waiting, watching. Then, in the distance, I heard the faint hum of the fairground's old carousel, rotating without power, its music box melody slow and distorted, drifting through the air like a dirge. My footsteps slowed. The world felt unreal, a twisted reflection of every case I'd chased. The orchestrator had known every move. The tunnel beneath the trailers, the silo's hidden crawlspace, the dairy's drainage pipes, Amber's fairground hideaway. They'd anticipated my approach, copied my entry, and stripped me of my evidence. They'd watched me in the mirror, waited in the passenger seat, taken what I spent months collecting. I swallowed hard, hand trembling around the doll. A whisper slithered through the mist, barely audible. "Game over." The words hung suspended as the carousel's melody warped into a single, pounding note. I exhaled slowly, every nerve alight. I surveyed the silent fairgrounds and the decaying silo under a sky waking to harsh clarity. 6 sites, 6 victims, 6 years of work, for nothing. Or perhaps I realized, for the one ultimate reveal, that I was not just the hunter, but the final prey. My radio crackled to life at last, command's voice urgent. "Deputy Larkin, are you safe? We need your location." I brought the mic to my mouth, cold, clear air filling my lungs, and spoke 2 words that felt like an admission of defeat and a vow of war. "I'm here." But even as I said it, I knew I wasn't. For the first time in my career, the darkness had outmaneuvered me, and the real question wasn't where I was, but who I'd become in the process. And in that moment, as the mist curled around my boots and the broken carousel melody faded to silence, I understood the final, brutal truth. Some games have no winners, and this one was just beginning. I still remember the night I reopened the file on the Henderson girl. The fluorescent strip light above my desk flickered as I lifted the manila folder labeled Case 17-112. Madeline Henderson, age 8. Missing October 3, 2012. My fingers traced the water stain at the corner, old coffee ring pressed into the cardboard. The station was silent except for the distant hum of the janitor's floor buffer and the low rumble of traffic beyond the cinder block walls. I poured fresh coffee into a styrofoam cup and pulled my chair closer, the vinyl squeaking beneath me. Outside, rain tapped against the window, an unseasonable drizzle for late spring, as if the weather itself mourned what had been lost. The original call had come in at 8:47 p.m., a frantic mother's voice crackling over the radio. She was right here, playing on the porch. 1 minute she was humming to herself. The next the porch light went out and she was gone. I'd been a rookie deputy then, 23 years old, fresh out of the academy and trembling under the weight of my first missing child assignment. I spent that entire night driving slow circles around Henderson Road, headlights carving pale arcs through the darkness. Every shadow between the old sycamores looked like a small girl in a dress. Every rustle of undergrowth sounded like her boots stepping on fallen leaves. I kept telling myself it was nothing but wind and wildlife, but my breath caught every time I spotted a flash of pink. A ribbon she'd worn that day, snagged on a low branch. We called in K9 units before dawn. Tracker dogs combed the fields, noses pressed to the damp earth, but they lost the scent where the gravel road met the wood line. At that point, we set up a grid of search teams, volunteered and weary neighbors wielding flashlights like swords. The air smelled of wet asphalt and fear, like a bruise threatening to burst. By sunrise, the entire county fairgrounds had been scoured. The abandoned concession stands emptied, the carousel platform lifted, and every inch of the mid-rifle range inspected. No sign of her, no footprints beyond the initial path into the trees. It was as though she had simply evaporated. Weeks turned into months. The folder holds yellowed witness statements. A neighbor swore she'd seen a white van parked at the curve. Another said they heard a child's giggle echoing from the forest after midnight. The latter statement was crossed out. Police ruled it unsubstantiated. I still wonder if that witness was silenced by fear or shame. Somewhere in the margin of the mother's original packet is a faint pencil note. Check gravel pit. We never did. The gravel pit was owned by a well-connected family friend of the Hendersons, and after a couple of polite refusals, the trail went cold. Years later, a man in a donut shop corner booth slid a yellowed photograph across the counter to me. A fuzzy snapshot of a child in an orange raincoat, standing too close to the tree line. The edges of the print were curled, and someone had scrawled, "Keep looking," in spidery ink on the back. He vanished before I could ask his name, leaving the photo in my palm like a burned offering. The county's missing persons list had long since archived Madeline's case, but I reopened it that night. I left the station after midnight, drove out Henderson Road under a sky heavy with cloud, and stopped at the curve where the witness said she'd walked. The ditch brimmed with pooled rainwater reflecting the trees like dark sentinels. There, half submerged in mud, was the frayed edge of a ribbon, pale, almost white where it hadn't soaked in the water. I grabbed it between thumb and forefinger, the fabric slick and cold, and held it to my lips. "I'm still here," I whispered. Then I wiped it dry on my sleeve, stuffed it into the folder, and drove back to town without looking in the rearview mirror. Weeks later, another folder turned up in my inbox. Case 19-205. Jason Crowley, age 32, found deceased under mysterious circumstances, March of 2014. The autopsy report was terse. Single gunshot wound to temple, no shell casing recovered, no witnesses. Jason's partner had reported him missing after the only clue was his cell phone dropping a call near the old logging trail east of Lakeburn. His body was discovered days later, face down in a shallow creek, hands still gripping the strap of his backpack. Authorities had ruled out foul play, chalking it up to suicide or an accidental shooting. But the photographs told a different story. Crude footprints circling the body as though someone had paced above the water before letting him drop. I drove the empty highway toward Lakeburn, passing decommissioned logging trucks and skeletal tree stumps that jutted into the sky. The logging trail was overgrown, brambles tearing at my pant legs, moss carpeted in emerald green. Water droplets gathered on ferns, then fell in silent taps. I found the shallow creek, water so clear I could see Jason's reflected face in the current, eyes closed as if sleeping. I knelt by the bank and traced the mud with a stick, an arch of footprints that led to a boulder he must have climbed, then collapsed backward. The prints stopped there. No sign of struggle in the underbrush, no dropped wallet, no note. Only his phone, recovered downstream, screen cracked, but still displaying the last dialed digits. His mother's number. Back at my desk, I stacked the two folders side by side. Henderson over Crowley. I flipped through each page, piecing together a pattern of vanished and reappearing clues. A child forgotten by her own search grid. A man whose death was deemed self-inflicted despite a bullet that entered from the outside. I felt that familiar tug of obsession, the one that had driven me through my first year on the force. I glanced at the rain-streaked window, midnight approaching. I slid both folders into my messenger bag, grabbed my flashlight, and headed for the patrol car. Somewhere out there, the road curves into woods and creeks and secrets that refused to stay buried. And I was determined to dig them up, even if they unearthed more questions than answers. I eased the patrol car onto Henderson Road, rain pelting the windshield in erratic drips that blurred the double yellow lines. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the curve where I'd found Madeline's ribbon. I pressed the cup of cold coffee into the cup holder and glanced at the dash clock. 12:17 a.m. The county felt empty at this hour. Only me, the rain, and the ghosts of cases that refused to stay buried. As I crept past the sycamores, I remembered the static-laced voicemail at the center of Madeline's file. I replayed it in my head. Her soft voice wobbled through the crackle. "Mommy, come back." That single whisper had haunted me for years. I reached to flip on the overhead lights, but paused. Inside, the glow felt too anemic, like admitting defeat. Better to sit in the dark, company kept only by the low thrumming of the engine. Up ahead, a broken stop sign leaned into the gravel shoulder. I killed the engine, and the car fell silent except for the rain's steady patter. I checked my belt, flashlight, backup magazine, my old notepad lined with scrawled clues. My heart drummed, recalling the dozen times I'd raced out here thinking another ribbon, another footprint might appear. And each time, nothing. Tonight felt different. An itch behind my eyes, as though the file itself had summoned me back. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped into the mire, boots sinking into soft gravel. Water pooled where tire tracks dug in, reflecting the car's red taillights. Two glowing embers fading behind me. I crouched by the tangle of reeds at the ditch's edge, fingers brushing damp earth and brittle leaves. Beneath them, the ribbon lay curled like a pale ghost. I eased it free, pressed it to my nose. The faint scent of mildew and forgotten cotton clung to it. I closed my eyes, inhaling, trying to catch the hint of a child's perfume, a last breath. A distant rumble rolled across the fields. Tractor? Thunder? I couldn't tell. The station was too far away, and no one else was out here at this hour. My flashlight beam wavered as I stood, eyes scanning the tree line. The road curved into blackness, and here and there a glimpse of pink ribbon tied to low branches, remnants of previous searches. Volunteers lugging lanterns across the mud, tying markers to guide the way, all long since pulled down or washed away. But the ribbons that remained were like markers of failure, proof that someone else had trod this ground and found nothing. I slipped the ribbon into a sealed evidence pouch taped to my belt and made a slow circle around the curve. Each step echoed in my ears, mixing with the drip, drip, drip of water off leaves. I kept my flashlight beam low, sweeping the underbrush as if the beam itself might startle the missing girl back into view. I paused at the tree line, chest tight, and imagined her standing just beyond the trees, arms outstretched, eyes bright with innocent hope. But when I shone the light between the trunks, only darkness stared back, an empty void. Back in the car, I wiped mud off my boots on the running board, climbed in, and started the engine. The radio kicked on with static, then the midnight music shift at the sheriff's station. I turned it off. No music tonight. I needed silence to let my thoughts settle on the next file. I pulled out Crowley's folder, case 19-205, and spread both files on the passenger seat. Henderson beside Crowley. A child vanished without trace. A man found dead with no shell casing. Footprints circling him like ritual. I traced the route on the map. Henderson Road to Lakeburn Logging Trail, 45 miles apart. But something in these disappearances felt connected. An echo of loss, a pattern of someone or something that thrived on the unresolved. My mind drifted to Crowley's last day, the hunting trip he never returned from. He'd been a wildlife biologist studying beaver populations in the wetlands east of town. I'd met him once at a community meeting. Tall, wiry, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. His colleagues said he was meticulous, always logging data in his waterproof journal. Yet, when they found his body, his journal was missing. Only the phone remained, screen cracked from impact with the creek bed. I recalled crouching by that creek, the moonlight catching on water-worn stones. I'd lifted his phone out of the shallows and watched as the cracked glass refracted the beam of my flashlight, like a fractured mirror reflecting death back at me. The footprints in the mud formed a stalking ring, as though someone paced there, deciding the moment to let Crowley fall. But who? And why leave the body in the creek instead of hiding it? The county pages had left it open, ruled suicide, closed file. I'd never believed that verdict. I slid the car out of Henderson Road and onto Highway 17, listening to the disguise of the wipers. The highway stretched straight and lifeless, dotted with shuttered gas stations that flickered off hours earlier. I pressed the accelerator, needed to clear my head before the next turn. The bright sign of my favorite diner came into view. Wes's Coffee and Pies, a beacon on lonely nights. I pulled into the lot, tires crunching over broken asphalt. As, inside, I ordered black coffee, no cream, no sugar, and found an empty booth with a cracked vinyl cushion. I studied the folders by the soft glow of the diner's neon open sign. The waitress refilled my cup without asking. She didn't need to know why I looked haunted. A late-night fixture in a small county. They all knew. I tapped my pen against the table, then wrote in my notepad, Henderson ribbon found May 12th at Curve. Crowley prints circle body, no shell casing recovered. Witness in 2013. He was talking to himself about unfinished business. Check gravel pit at the edge of ranch south of Henderson Road. I folded the notepad and slipped it into Crowley's folder. The din of the diner, chatter, coffee machines, distant laughter, felt hollow, as though I observed it from behind glass. I drained my cup and stood, the weight of 2 cold cases pressing down on my shoulders. I paid with a 20, tipped generously, and stepped back into the night. Rain had stopped. The road glistened under the street lamps as I drove back toward the station. My headlights passed over the rusted gates of the gravel pit south of Henderson Road. The place I'd avoided. Politics of the owners, polite refusals, closed doors. My gut told me answers lay there, hidden beneath layers of gravel and influence. I slowed and glanced left. The pit lay silent, water pooling where trucks once unloaded stone. The fence was topped with barbed wire and a faded sign. Private property, no trespassing. I parked 70 yards down the road, grabbed my flashlight and approached the fence. The sign swung in the breeze, its paint peeling like old skin. I found a loose board in the fence and slipped through, the wire snagging my jacket sleeve. Beyond lay a crater of gray stones, half flooded with muddy rainwater. I shone the beam across the churning surface, searching for anything out of place. Gravel shifted under my boots. I probed the pool with my flashlight. No ribbon, no footprints, no relic of a child or a man. Just the wide stain of water that would soon evaporate under the morning sun. I knelt and scooped up a handful of mud, watching dirt trickle between my fingers. Tiny pebbles mixed with soil, minerals from deep in the earth, hardened centuries ago. I wondered if someone had buried something here once, and the ground had swallowed it into eternity. My breath fogged in the beam as I lifted my flashlight toward the far edge of the pit, where the land curved back into forest, endless and impenetrable. Something moved in the tree line, a branch broken, a shadow shifting. I blinked, and nothing. My heart thumped in my ears as I stood, trained the beam on the darkness, and saw only trees. A low growl of thunder rumbled overhead. I rose, wiped the mud from my jeans, and slipped back through the fence's gap. I paused for a moment beneath the no trespassing sign, letting the weight of the night seep into my bones. Then I turned and walked back to the patrol car, the gravel crunching like the bones of unsung victims beneath my feet. When I reached the driver's door, I felt it, a tug at my belt where the ribbon pouch lay. I placed my hand over it and closed my fingers around the folder-bound proof of Madeline's disappearance. I didn't know what awaited me in that gravel pit, or if any evidence would ever surface. But I did know this. Every step deeper into these cases pulled me further from rest. Patterns emerged in the mud and ribbon and footprints, weaving a tapestry of human absence and unspoken horror. And I was the one left holding the strings, alone in my patrol car as dawn tiptoed across the horizon, chasing shadows away but leaving questions in their place. I started the engine and drove the rest of the way to the station, the files on the passenger seat like cold weights anchoring me to this endless pursuit. Somewhere in the county, beneath layers of earth, someone knew what happened to Madeline. And someone knew the secrets of Jason Crowley's final night. It was only a matter of time before those truths emerged, whether I was ready or not. The rain began again, softer this time, as if the sky sighed. And I, Deputy Ryan Blake, leaned forward on the wheel, resolve sharpening through the murk. Come what may, I would not let another file go cold under my watch. I drove straight through the night toward the Rust County Fairgrounds. headlights carving twin tunnels through the darkness. The old Ferris wheel loomed like a skeletal moonrise against the starless sky. I parked by the locked main gate, its padlock rusted but still formidable, and killed the engine. My flashlight joined the patrol car's beam in cutting through the gloom as I ducked under the fence and stepped onto the cracked asphalt of the midway. The fairgrounds were silent now, but I could still feel the pulse of laughter and music that once draped the place in life. I traced the faded white line of the bumper car arena to the tilt-a-whirl, where Jason Crowley's final phone pinged off a severed cell signal 6 years ago. I remembered the investigators, tape, a single blurry frame of a figure leaning over him as he stumbled off the ride. They called it operator error. I never believed it. My boots crunched on discarded popcorn bags and broken glow sticks. The carousel stood motionless, wooden horses frozen in mid-gallop, their paint chipped by time and neglect. I shone the light across their glassy eyes, wide with some permanent, manic terror. A gust of wind rattled the empty ticket booths, and I thought I heard the creak of the horses' poles. I swallowed, gripping my flashlight until my knuckles whitened. I headed toward the midway entrance, where the concession stands formed a U-shape around a small central plaza. There, I stopped at the base of the abandoned stage, a platform littered with soggy flyers and half-rotted streamers. I crouched to examine the ground. Footprints pressed into the dirt, leading toward the nearest exit gate. The prints were too large to be a teenager's, too neat to belong to an animal. Someone had walked beside a captive, perhaps Jason himself, before both vanished. Standing, I followed the footprints beyond the fence into the overgrown lot where trailers and old ride cars sat rotting behind chain link. I passed the battered bumper cars and reached a cluster of shipping containers. One container door hung ajar. I clicked on my flashlight and trained the beam inside. Empty, save for a single porcelain doll, not unlike Madeline's, propped on a crate, its head tilted. Its lifeless eyes reflected the light like black pits. I knelt and picked it up by the arm. The paint was scuffed, and inside the hollow head I found a single crumpled Polaroid. A snapshot of someone standing at the edge of the woods, back turned, dripping wet under a rain-soaked sky. I thumbed the image, mind racing. Who took this? And why leave it here? I stowed the doll in my jacket and pressed onward, following the trail of footprints into the shadows of the trees that flanked the fairgrounds. The woods felt alive, branches whispering secrets, leaves brushing my face like cold fingers. I kept my beam low, searching for any sign of a campsite or recent disturbance. Eventually, I found it. A flattened clearing sheltered by oaks, the grass matted where a tent once stood. The ground was trampled, cigarette butts littered the soil. On a moss-covered log, I saw a rusted metal tin, its lid pried open. Inside lay an assortment of small objects. A child's ribbon, once bright, now stained, a matchbook from a rundown motel in Lakeburn, and a scrap of Crowley's waterproof journal, the edges singed. My pulse quickened. I plucked the journal page, blurry handwriting that ended mid-sentence. I thought I heard her. The rest was unreadable, jarred. I stepped back, heart pounding, and heard something snap behind me. I swung the light around, but saw only darkness. No movement, only the soft drip of water off leaves and my own ragged breathing. Footprints circled the clearing. 2 sets, overlapping. One belonging to a man's heavy boot, the other smaller, lighter, as though someone had danced around the camper before vanishing. I realized with a cold certainty. Whoever brought Jason here waited until he lay down, then left without disturbing the grass beyond those precise circles. They had done it before, in other places, in other cases, walking rings around the victim, I gathered the scattered evidence and pressed on, deeper into the woods, until the trees thinned and I emerged onto a narrow back road. The pavement was slick with night rain, reflecting the glow of my flashlight as I shone it ahead. There, 30 feet away, I saw a lone swing set standing in moonlight. The chains swayed, creaking softly. No breeze stirred, only the metal lamenting its own rust. I crossed the road to inspect it, every step echoing like a drumbeat of foreboding. Beneath the swings lay something half-buried, a cracked cell phone screen dancing with static. I crouched, boot brushing away leaves, and turned it over. The wallpaper was the same image Crowley had used, a black and white portrait of his family, smiling in front of a cabin. I felt bile rise in my throat. This place, this swing set, had never been on any map. Not in witness accounts, not in search logs. It was a phantom location, known only to the killer. My flashlight caught movement at the tree line, slow, deliberate. A figure stepped out, tall, lean, silhouette framed by the fairground's distant neon glow. I pointed my beam, but the light flickered and died. Batteries drained. I cursed, fumbled for replacements, and when I clicked the new battery into place, the beam blazed back to life. Only to find the figure gone. No footprints led away from the road, no disturbance where it had stood. The only evidence was that low, mechanical creak of the swing chain. I shivered, heart thunderous, and made my way back to the car, mind haunted by the notion that someone, or something, had watched me. As I climbed inside, I spotted, scrawled words on the car's hood in smeared mud. "Still here." My breath caught. I peered at the passenger seat, the Madeline ribbon, the Crowley doll, the singed journal page. They lay together now, a trio of tokens from cases that refused to stay silent. I started the engine, hands shaking on the wheel, and drove away as the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon. The fairgrounds vanished behind me, swallowed by mist and memory. I will return, to the woods, to the gravel pit, to the places where lines of footprints encircle unanswered questions, because I cannot rest until I hear one final whisper from the darkness, one confession carved in bone and ribbon and broken bones. I pulled into the station parking lot just as the sun slipped beneath the treetops, casting the world in a bruised violet light. The patrol car's engine ticked as it cooled. I left the evidence bags on the passenger seat, Madeline's ribbon in an evidence pouch, the battered porcelain doll tucked under my arm, Crowley's singed journal page pressed between the folders. My reflection stared back at me from the window. Hollowed eyes, pale skin, a man who'd chased ghosts across county lines and through midnight rain. Inside, the station was already stirring. Dispatchers swapped morning gossip under flickering fluorescents. Deputies shuffled through a roll call, mugs of coffee in hand. I slipped past them, clutching the folders as though they were lifelines. At my desk, I set them down and powered on my computer. The inbox pinged. Routine memos, a traffic school reminder for Deputy Vega, an email from the chief about budget cuts. Buried beneath them all was a single unread message with no subject and no signature. An attached photograph dated this morning, time-stamped 6:03 a.m. I clicked it open and felt the blood drain from my face. The image showed the interior of my patrol car, exactly as it had sat when I parked last night. The evidence bags were gone. In their place lay a neatly folded white towel, glistening with damp in the camera's flash. On the towel, in precise block letters written with what looked like black marker, were 3 words: "Don't look back." My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. The metadata on the file showed no sender. The digital footprint traced back only to our county network. Someone had accessed the station's security camera feed, dismantled the evidence, and left me a warning. I felt my pulse spike. Fear, adrenaline, a bitter thrill. I jumped from my chair and cleared the desktop with a sweep of my arm. "Chief?" I barked, voice rough. He looked up from his office doorway. "We've got a break-in in the evidence locker," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "And I think it's personal." He frowned, eyes narrowing. "Show me." I led him to the locked vault where patrol rifles and cold case files were stored. The lock was undisturbed, but inside my patrol car's evidence was missing. The ribbon, the doll, the journal page, gone. Only that single white towel lay folded atop an empty shelf. The marker scrawl was fresh, ink still tacky. "We'll review camera footage from last night," he said. "We'll find whoever did this." I nodded, but inside, a chill settled in my gut. If they could breach the station's most secure area, then nothing, no file, no relic, no piece of torn ribbon, was safe from their reach. And the message? It wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. I spent the rest of the morning combing through footage. All cameras between the main gate and the vault were active, but the hallway camera outside the locker showed only one figure, me, returning from the fairgrounds at dawn. There was no second person. The timestamp jumped from 5:45 a.m. to 6:05 a.m., 15 minutes of blank frames. The server log recorded a maintenance cycle at 6 a.m., but no one had scheduled it. Someone had looped the feed, erased their passage. That afternoon, I sat at my desk under a single lamp, retyping the case notes into a new file. Urgent, suspected internal breach, evidence tampering, threat against investigator. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A cold dread settled in my chest. This wasn't just about missing children and dead men. Someone was watching me sift through the bones of the past, and they wanted the story to end before I uncovered the final truth. On a hunch, I retrieved the maintenance log for the station's security system and matched it against the phone records from last night. A single call had been placed from an unmarked number to the IT line at 5:58 a.m. The caller had used a voice-altering app, impossible to trace. But they'd slipped in one word at the end. "Good work, deputy." It crackled through the recording, distorted but unmistakable. My blood ran cold. Someone inside the department was feeding the killer information. Or worse, they were the killer, cleaning up their own tracks. I shut the laptop and stood, heart hammering. Outside, a storm gathered on the horizon, thunder, rolling like distant artillery. I holstered my flashlight on my hip and reached for my coat. Something deep in me stirred, a mixture of duty and dread. I would follow that call trail, unmask the insider, reclaim what was stolen. But as I passed the vault for a final glance, I saw the towel again, draped across my notepad on the evidence table. Underneath, scrawled in the same black marker, were two new words. "Look closer." I froze. The words glared up from the table like a dare. All at once I felt the weight of every unsolved case. Madeline's laughter in the dark, the man in Shadow Hollow grasping that doll, Jason's footsteps circling his final breath. The evidence given to me, then ripped away, was only part of the story. The real truth lay somewhere beyond my files, in the hands of a person who knew my every move and reveled in my obsession. I swallowed hard, mouth dry, and reached forward. My fingertips brushed the marker's wet ink as I picked up the towel, then the notepad. Beneath the towel's folds, I found a single grain of white sand, like the shimmer of memory on a forgotten shore. I held it up to the light. It was too large, too perfect to be ordinary. A pattern clicked in my mind. Fairgrounds, forests, Bits of gravel, wet mud, and now this, a grain of sand, improbably intact. Someone was drawing a map for me, one I could scarcely read, but one that pulsed with unresolved horror. I tucked the grain into my pocket and stuffed the towel back in the vault. My reflection flickered in the glass door as I closed it. Then I walked away alone, mind racing with half-glimpsed patterns and chilling questions. What would I find if I followed the sand's trail? Who was guiding me and why? And what lay at the end of this dark map where the final grain waited? The question echoed in the empty station as lights overhead blinked off, plunging the hall into darkness. I stood frozen, breath shallow, and realized that for all my searching I had never wanted the truth more, and feared it so deeply. Tomorrow I would look closer, but tonight I would sleep with one eye open, haunted by the knowledge that someone, not just the killer, was always watching me.